once you take those semantic quizzes, you realize where your weaknesses lies, right? And once you have that, like for example, if there's this topic in algebra that you feel that okay, you're getting most of the questions wrong, even if it's a medium level question or easy level question, semantic questions definitely help out there. In CR, I would say definitely pre-thinking. I used to do a bit of pre-thinking before as well, but my process was not as structured as what was taught in eGMAT videos. So definitely that was a game changer for me. Look, I mean, kind of writing down things was making short notes was one of the things that helped me out. I would want to emphasize is that focus on reading in such a way that there is minimal going back to the passage. Because at times what can happen is we get stuck on a question and try to search for that answer in the passage.
Hello everyone, a very good morning, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to another debrief session with eGMAT. Today we have with us Chitwan, who scored a 725 on his recent attempt. So congratulations Chitwan, and thank you for joining in today.
Thank you, Amam. Thank you for having me.
So Chitwan, I know that 725 is a very awesome score, and I'm sure that you're completely thrilled on receiving it. But before we deep dive more into your journey, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your background?
Sure, thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Chitwan. I graduated from DTU, Delhi Technological University in the year 2022. And since then I've been working in the field of data science, machine learning for around like close to 3 years now. In the middle of like last year, I decided to kind of think about pursuing MBA as a long-term career opportunity. So I, like every traditional, like every Indian aspirant there, I started to prepare for CAT. Got a good enough score, like slightly over 99th percentile, but given the general engineering male curse that I have, it was not enough to get into my desired B schools. So at that point, I was pretty comfortable with things like in terms of my academics and subjects. So I decided to maybe give GMAT a shot as well, given that they have a similar nature. So maybe I thought, why not? Let's give it a shot. And yeah, prepared with eGMAT for a month, and so fine-tuned some of my weak sections, give a lot of mocks, and yeah, then just went ahead with the exam.
Yes. Now, breaking it down, Chitwan, when you wrote to us back in the late February of this year when we started off with eGMAT. So when you first wrote to us, you had already given a couple of official marks where you were scoring in the range of 645, 655. But there was a certain element of plateau that was very much visible. You were not able to break that threshold, right? So when you look back at your journey, what were the major challenges that you were facing back then? And how did you go about overcoming them? You can talk about the section wise as well.
Got it. So yeah, no, definitely. When I started out, with a 645. Given that I had certain fundamentals cleared already. But the main challenge, again, the thing is that when you've learned something and you move to a new dimension or a new perspective, you might have to unlearn certain things and learn new things again. So that unlearning process was, I think, a bit of a challenge at the beginning. In the beginning, like earlier, while I was used to attempt mocks for CAT, it was more of a selective nature. You don't have to solve every question. Like even there are 22 questions in Quant, you have to solve 10 to 12. But that's not the case in GMAT. You have to kind of solve every question in each subject. So kind of changing my strategy from, let's say, selecting to coming into a mindset where I have to solve every question.
Right.
Of course, there's a bit of selectiveness here as well, because we don't want to spend too much time on a particular question just to, mark all the questions, because then you will have to rush through, or maybe in the end you might skip some questions, which again will penalize you more. So yeah, so kind of changing my mindset from earlier learnings to new learnings. That was a bit of a hassle, but yeah, over time, I feel that I got hold of it, and yeah, it turned out well.
Right. Now, if we deep dive into your sectional wise, right, at this point in Quant, you have a perfect score. Okay.
Yeah.
You started off at a strong foot as well. You were scoring within the range of Q85, Q86. Okay.
Yeah.
So what helped you push it further? What were the key skills that you feel are necessary for that perfect Quant score? How did you go about bridging those, gaps or lingering weak areas?
Okay, I believe no, definitely strong concepts have to be in there. Like I was good enough with math during my school days also, like when I was preparing for JEE as well. So I had my basics covered there. I had strong fundamentals, and then so again, the point here is to have good fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Not thinking maths problems, quant problems from the point of view of what formula will solve this question, but more of a intuitive thinking. Like if you read a problem, it should paint a clear picture in your mind that okay, this is how you go about solving it. And then and you have when you have that understanding, then there's no need to remember any formula. You will intuitively kind of start solving problems with the concepts that you have. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely that has to be there, and that would come by practice only. So
Right.
if you're someone who's a beginner or who has lost touch with quant, yeah, definitely practicing a lot would help you get better.
Right.
And again, I would say when you have that decent amount of prior background and knowledge, at times you tend to get overconfident.
Mm.
So that was my problem. I was making very silly mistakes
Mm-hmm.
in the quant section. That upon analyzing, I was like, why did I even do that?
Mm.
Because again, the question was not that difficult, but maybe I skipped reading a point in again in the rush to complete all the questions. Uh, Read wrong values or marked the wrong option because the final question statement was kind of tuned in such a way that that could confuse you, and I
Mm-hmm.
fell in their trap. So yeah, maybe slowing down a little there,
Mm.
reading the question properly. One thing that I learned, in fact, like, this is what my brother suggested, that whatever, like if you're supposed to find X, before starting solving the question, right on top find X, so
Mm.
that okay, you know that eventually you want to find solve for X and not
Right.
for Y if the question involves Y as well. So
Mm.
that way you would be able to kind of avoid those errors where you actually supposed to solve for X, which was hidden in the question statement, and Y was more reflected from, and then you ended up marking Y only because Y was also present in the option.
Right.
Yeah. So that tip kind of a little helped me there also. But yeah, again, the point is to kind of if you're almost there, slow it down, take your time, read the question. I mean, finishing the exam early will not fetch you extra points. So it's better to kind of solve every question when you can correctly with spending sufficient time on each question.
Right. I think you put out a very valid point here that, finishing the test is not the task.
Correct.
Solving the questions correctly is the task here. Right.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned a lot about, doing practice that helped you. Right.
Yeah.
But we also understand blindly solving questions is not going to fetch anyone a good score.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about practice, you solved a lot of cementing quizzes while on the platform, which
Yeah.
are timed quizzes. Right.
Yeah.
So how do those contribute to your preparation?
No, definitely. Once you take those semantic quizzes, you realize where your weaknesses lies, right?
Mm,
And once you have that, like for example, if there's this topic in algebra that you feel that okay, you're getting most of the questions wrong, even if it's a medium level question or easy level question,
mm,
semantic questions definitely help out there, where it kind of help you pinpoint where the problem lies. And
mm,
once identified, definitely you help me a lot there, like identifying my weak areas,
mm.
and then you go back to those topics, those video lectures. Those untimed questions from those topics just to ensure that okay, going forward when you attempt a test or a quiz, you don't get those wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Yeah.
right. Moving to your verbal, Chitwan, you were in the range of V81, right? 80, 81. And at this point, we're talking about the V84, which
Yeah.
is a huge jump when we talk about the percentile wise improvement, right?
Correct.
So when you look back at your verbal, how you used to solve it, before you took up the course, what were the things that actually changed process wise for you in CR and RC?
In CR, I would say definitely pre-thinking.
Hmm.
I used to do a bit of pre-thinking before as well, but my process was not as structured as what was taught in eGMAT videos.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely that was a game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I mean, kind of writing down things was making short notes was one of the things that helped me out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I used to read properly. I used to read from the point of view of understanding what the author is trying to say, what the message is conveyed. But yeah, at times I'd realized that like while reaching towards the end of the passage, I might have forgot what the earlier passage, like what or the earlier paragraphs were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Making notes of those help me prevent those errors. Like now,
Right.
I know okay, this was talked about in the first paragraph. Again, the point here is might not be to kind of summarize the passage or summarize the paragraph so that you can refer it later. But maybe I also feel that psychological. When you write down things, you tend to retain things better.
Right. Mm.
So that is also there, even if it's not making proper notes because you don't have time that you can summarize the entire paragraph. Maybe writing a couple of words in short form, like whatever abbreviations that you feel comfortable with, should be enough. Again, the point is to ensure that you retain things when you reach those questions.
Right.
Again, another thing that I would want to emphasize is that focus on reading in such a way that there's minimal going back to the passage. Because at times what can happen is we get stuck on a question and try to search for that answer in the passage, and that ends up wasting a lot of time. So my first advice would be to again read in such a way, or try to retain in such a way that you have to go back to the passage very few times, in fact negligible times. And even if there's a situation that you are, despite reading properly, because there can be at times that we get lost in the middle, but we then catch up pace again. So and if you're unlucky enough, from the part where you kind of miss the board, you get a question from there. Yeah, so there can be times where again that is luck based, that you miss out on certain point and you get a question from there only. So at that point, my advice would be don't go back or try to panic and start finding the answer. Maybe mark it for now, mark it for review, and move on.
Right.
And one thing that I've realized that if you're towards the end of the exam and you have 4 to 5 minutes left, or even 2 to 3 minutes left, your confidence kind of increase that, okay, I'm done with the paper, I still have a few minutes left, maybe I can quickly rush back and solve those questions that I marked for earlier. And I've realized that even when you're not actively thinking about it, your subconscious is kind of solving that problem in back of your mind.
Right.
And I've realized that once you go back, you end up marking that correct, that question correctly, even when you're not able to do it in the first go.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes when we go back after finishing the test, firstly, that burden is off, that we still have so many questions to do. And we look at a question with a better perspective, a new perspective. So sometimes it becomes much more easier for us to comprehend in that very moment.
Correct. Our mind is also a bit relaxed then.
Exactly. Because you know that, okay, the rest is sorted. If I can fix this, I think things will be better.
Exactly.
Right. Now, Chitwan, see, we are talking about GMAT. We know that the syllabus is vast, right? When you're talking about moving from one section to another section, as you make progress, learning the concepts, practicing, right? How would you make sure that, you're staying in touch with the previous section that you completed? Would you revise your notes, error logs? What would be that activity that you would do?
No, definitely. Error logs was one thing that I used heavily during my verbal preparation, especially. Quant, I would say I did not go much into that because I felt very confident that I have things sorted there. But verbal and DI are definitely some of the sections that I referred error logs again heavily. Revise those incorrect questions, like redo those incorrect questions again, maybe after a couple of days, so that I don't have a very high recall of that. So yeah, that was the approach on revising things and looking back at mistakes. Yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned that, you used to go back, especially for verbal and DI, used to refer back a lot to the error log, right? And make sure you are learning from your mistakes. So when we talk about DI, what would be the common types of mistakes that you identified during your process?
So again, DI is kind of a mix of both quant and verbal. So if you have any problems or if you have any lingering issues that is present in those areas, that would surely reflect in your data insights also. So for example, in DI, you have that, I'm forgetting that name, where you have 4 options, either one would be enough to solve the question.
DS, data sufficiency.
Yes. Data sufficiency. Again, I was making those silly errors in quant-based questions. I'll give you one example. It was a simple linear equations that we had to solve. One was given, and from the 2 statements, you had to devise whether either of the statements could help you get that second linear equation, so that you can solve the 2 equations to get the answer. While the first was able to do it, second was also able to do it. But the problem with second was once you follow the instruction on the second pointer or the second statement, it ended up giving you the same equation that was in the question. So it was actually not the second one, but the first one in a different way. But I again, being a little overconfident, didn't even write a word there. Okay, and I realized, okay, this statement would fetch me a second equation, and I have one equation, I would be able to solve it. But the mistake was that, okay, the second equation that I was getting was exactly the same as the first equation, and hence you wouldn't get the two values. So those kind of errors, in especially quant-based questions. And then I would say in verbal, to be very honest, I did not feel very challenged because given once your verbal concepts are cleared, the DI verbal I feel is a little easier. It's not as CR, as critical reasoning based as the actual CR. There's a bit of aspect there, like where you have to think about like causes and effect and things like that. But definitely, once you have those verbal concepts cleared, DI verbal I did not find very difficult. I would be very honest with that.
Okay. Yeah. And DI is the section where you saw the maximum improvement as well. When we talk about, the rest of the sections, you literally move from a 77 to an 84 right now, which is massive, right? So the common problem that a lot of people face in DI is how to manage time. in this section, right? So what were your key takeaways or strategies that you would definitely keep in mind while going for a DI sectional or a mock?
What I realized with DI, I have to take a bit of a different approach than my quant. Like quant,
Mhm.
I was a little calm, cool, and approaching the questions very, very easily. And because I know that I would be able to do it within the time.
Right.
But with DI, I was facing a lot of problem that, okay, when I reached 15 questions, 16 questions, I ran out of time and I just have to mark the questions randomly, which ended up most of the time being wrong.
Mhm.
Uh, so there, I changed my approach from a more calm way to a more of a proactive approach. Like
Mm.
I was like on my toes while solving the DI questions.
Mm.
Uh, not getting stuck or not giving too much time on a simple DS problem, thinking about corner, because again there are two statements you start thinking about it. Okay, what if this happens? What if that happens?
Mm.
So I mean, avoid doing that. Just stay stuck to the two statements that are given objectively. Do
Mm.
not think about any corner cases. If there are any, it should have get reflected in your solution when you were solving it. So
Right.
just don't get fixated with it. Okay, if I mean, either of them could be the solution, or maybe the first was framed in such a way that that it could solve the question, but I was not able to figure it out, and I needed the second statement to kind of deduce the answer. So yeah,
Mhm.
whatever you're getting, and be confident with that, and just be proactive and quickly mark and move. Uh, and with DI, at times there can be certain graphs that you might not be able to understand in the first go.
Mhm.
So in fact, even in my exam, I found such a graph that I'd never seen before, like during my mocks or practice. I
Mm.
realized this is not the time to learn or experiment.
Right.
It is gone now. Like so that part is gone. So it's better to move on.
Right.
You're supposed to solve every 20 question correctly. Even if you reach that 16, 17, 18 mark,
Right.
you would be at a very good score. So
Mhm.
it's no point getting fixated that okay, I need to solve all 20 questions correctly, because
Mhm.
I knew that in DI I might not be able to do it. In verbal and DI I might not be able to do it because
Mhm.
yeah, given that I prepared for not very long. Uh, I had one very strong section, and other two decent enough sections, and I thought that would be enough. That should be enough to reach my target. So
Right.
no point in fixing that I'm going to solve all 20 questions. Even if you get that 16, 17, 18 number mark, you should get a good enough score. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. So I was looking into your stats also, and I'm going to quickly share my screen here. Let me know. Yeah. So you followed the stage 1, stage 2 approach here when we talk about DI, especially Chitwan, because you had to learn the concepts and then move to the practice phase, the cementing phase, right? And I was looking into your grades, and I see really, really exceptional grades, straight A's and A minuses across. And this is DS, something that you have been talking about for some time now, and
Yeah.
in our discussion as well, right? So do you think it makes a big impact if you first follow the stage 1, stage 2 approach of first focusing on building a strong foundation and then gradually moving to practice, starting with medium and then hard questions?
No, definitely, optimizing a processes definitely helps. As I mentioned earlier, that even though I had my basics clear, but again, with those two statements, I was thinking about corner cases,
Right.
missing out on some certain concepts on how to evaluate the statements. So definitely, optimizing a processes, kind of trying to fill your gaps, definitely helps a lot. And yeah, those two foundation kind of courses, their lectures helped me a lot with that. Yeah.
Right. Now, moving to the final phase. So, we are at a position where we are done with fixing those gaps, right?
Yeah.
We know that you are at a certain ability with your verbal, quant, DI. It's time for test readiness, sectional tests, and mocks, right? So, a sectional test, I know you have taken a couple of sectional tests, which
Yeah.
are mini mocks, and then
Yes.
you move to the full length mocks,
Yes.
right? So, what was the major difference that you felt in the sectionals compared to the mocks? And what would be the sequence order that you would prefer in the full length mocks?
So I would say I didn't feel any significant difference as such. Definitely, it was the full length was of completely three sections, and it was just an individual section. So
Mhm.
once I approached in the same way that I would approach a particular section in the full length.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right. So I did not kind of try to find differences between the two. I approached them in the same way.
Did they
Uh,
prepare you better when you were taking sectionals? Is it like a step one before the mocks?
Definitely, yeah, it gives you confidence. So yeah,
Right.
in that sense, I used to attempt a section before going to the actual mock, because like
Hmm.
if I score well in a section, then I'm kind of confident. Okay, uh, uh, and so I used to treat sectional as a kind of a mock, and actual mock as an actual exam. That okay,
Hmm.
this is my time for preparation. This time to test myself, and then mock test is my actual exam. Like I used to think that way. So definitely, kind of getting a good score. Also, if you make even certain mistakes, and you after attempting the mock a sectional mock, you find okay, this was silly error, this was this kind of an error, that you okay, then that mistake is readily there in your mind, that you and then you're sure that okay, that
Hmm.
to avoid this at all costs in the actual mock. So
Right.
in that sense, definitely that taking sectional helps. In terms of the full length mocks, definitely I think that was the kind of game changer,
Hmm.
uh, because that gives you the real feel of the exam.
Exactly.
That's how your
Exactly.
exam is going to look like. So kind of that gives a feeling that okay, I am almost at the stage now. I'm prepared with my concepts. I just need to fine tune my test taking strategies. So
Right.
yeah, so the mocks are definitely the most important things. Analyzing your mistakes is even important. What kind of mistakes you're making, so that you don't do that in the subsequent tests
Right.
and the eventual exam at the D-Day. So yeah, definitely mocks helps in that way, and it was a totally game changer for me. Then
Right.
in terms of the order, I would say start with your strengths.
Hmm.
I felt that quant and verbal, because I'd done that before.
Hmm.
So that those were my strengths. So I started with first with quant, and then with verbal, and then with data insights,
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of gave me kind of a feeling that okay, I'm done with my two strong sections,
Right.
where I could get most of my score out of. Now I just need to ensure that I don't mess it up in this section where I'm not very strong at it. But
Hmm.
eventually, I ended up getting a good enough score there also. But
Right.
yeah, that gives me you confident. Okay, that you once you have those strong sections attempted, and you get a feel that okay, I done things uh, like pretty fine there, and
Hmm.
I'm very close to my target, like in your mind that whatever your target is. And then you just need to ensure that okay, in your third section, you just don't do anything wrong or mess it up, whatever progress you've made in the first two sections. Yeah.
Right, right. Now, talking about the final test date, I know when, like, we have spoken before, and I understand you expressed how you felt when you saw that score,
Yeah.
right? The 725. So, while giving the test, did you have an inclination that things were going off, or were you still, holding back and thinking that you'll just wait for the screen?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, also Quant did feel a little challenging
Hmm.
as compared to the official mocks that I had given, because
Right.
I could feel that I had to put in that effort to solve the questions. Although I did end up solving all the questions like 4 or 5 minutes before the time, but in my mocks I used to do it like 10 minutes ago. In fact, I remember in one of official mock, I believe it was the fifth one, I could go through the questions two times, all the 20 questions, 20,
Hmm.
20 odd questions. So that was the level of question that I saw during the mock tests, the official mock test. Definitely,
Hmm.
the eGMAT ones were a little on the higher end, but even though there also, I used to have some time, like 7 to 8 minutes, with me, so that I could revisit questions where maybe I might have made any mistake that I thought, okay, I will review it later. Uh,
Right.
but in the actual exam, I could see that the problems were a bit more wordy.
Mm-hmm.
They were not as straightforward, like just a couple of words and then say find whatever you want to find, supposed to find. It were more of a word problems, you can say. A lot of situation based questions were there. So understanding those what is they given us, that took a bit of time. Uh, and maybe it could be a factor that in the actual exam you want to be a little
Hmm.
extra conscious with your approach, with your solution, you're double checking the steps and everything. Uh, which I might have skipped at times during the mocks. But yeah, that could also be another reason. But I again ended up solving the section like 3, 4, 5 minutes ago, like before the time. Uh, but yeah, I would say that be prepared if you kind of get a surprise in the exam. Verbal, on the other hand, to be very honest, I felt a little on the easier side than the actual mocks. Uh, but again, there also I felt that I'd spent some a little extra time on some of the questions during the middle, which kind of ended up making me rush through the last couple
Yeah.
of questions, and I ended up getting that wrong.
Hmm.
So maybe like keeping track of where you are at the moment, uh, maybe by looking at the clock or whatever approach that you follow, you should keep that in mind so that you don't
Right.
spend extra time. DI again felt very comparable
Mm-hmm.
to what I had been solving, apart from a one I remember, like one graph based question that like the graph I did not see during my preparation.
Hmm.
Uh, Apart from that, everything I believe felt at par with what I had been doing till now. Definitely got the total three questions wrong, and in fact, out of
Hmm.
those three, two were one of those graphs that I had never seen, and second was okay. I kind of it was a verbal based question only, non math, and I had kind of maybe I got lost while reading, and I had to make a quick decision, like reading back the passage or moving on. I think I made the latter decision, and then that was the correct decision, because if I went again, read the
Yeah.
passage, extra time would have been spent and a panic would have created, and then eventually I might have, even then I would have ended up marking that wrong,
Yep.
because a lot of time would have been spent and I would be kind of rushed. Okay, I need to mark because I've spent so much time. There's sunken cost theory there. So but yeah, I think not getting fixated to a particular question and moving on at the right time, that is definitely those decision making skills you will eventually learned by giving a lot of tests. Yeah.
Right, right. So, Chitwan, my final question to you here is that when you look back at your journey, what would be the key takeaways that or learnings that you would like to share with the other GMAT aspirants?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, don't compromise on your goals. Even if your preferred institute has a lower kind of a cutoff, or basically a score that they would accept.
Yeah.
But if you have set up a certain goal for yourself, try to achieve it,
Right.
no matter what. Then I would say keep your fundamentals clear. Don't rely too much on formula. I have never preferred that approach in my entire academic journey, like till now.
Hmm.
Learning concepts is the way to go, and I've definitely realized that okay, that reflects in other areas of your life as well. That you would, if you're even if trying to solve a problem, you will try to deep dive into causes of the problem rather than just a superficial solution of that. So
Right.
yeah, getting your fundamentals clear, not getting fixated about certain things, moving on at the right time, building those decision making skills. So these are some of the key takeaways that kind of exam like GMAT teaches you. And I believe if you again if you read through those skills, they are very generic and can be
Hmm.
applied to general life as well. So definitely, yeah, these are some of the takeaways that I would take away from the journey and would want to share with your audience. All in all, it was a really great experience, and I feel like people say this is just an exam. I don't take things that way. Even if it's an exam,
Yeah.
it does teach you certain things about life that you can apply in life. Yeah. So yeah, it's all in all, it's been a great experience. And at the end of the day, I got a good enough result. So I'm very happy about it. God is great. Yeah. Very good.
Yes, yes. And we're also really, really happy that we could be part. And I'm so glad because, you rightly put that sometimes you set some goals for yourself and you should not be settling because I
Yeah.
know that in your first attempt you got a 675,
Yeah.
right? And to be honest, which is a good score and it should be sufficient enough for the target schools also. But I know at the back of the mind you had that thing that, that 700 plus I needed
Correct.
and that eventually turned out to be as well. So
Definitely.
definitely the 725 is a beautiful score. It wraps
Yeah.
up your journey in the best
Yeah.
possible way,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sure, Chitwin, the attitude that you carry is going to take you a long way. And I wish you all the best for your next steps.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
thank you for being a part of eGMAT. Thank you.
Thank you for helping me out. So like at every point of time, you've been a great, really, really great support and great mentor there. Yeah.
Had a great time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.